Well, good morning. On May 8th, the Legislative Audit Bureau released yet another scathing audit of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, indicating that the agency was still not fully following state laws governing its programs or even its own board-approved policies. And then only 9 days later, media reports revealed the existence of an unsecured loan WEDC had made to a well-connected Milwaukee businessman who happened to be a major campaign contributor to Governor Walker. This loan, that has never been repaid, was made over the objections of WEDC underwriting staff and apparently without a formal staff review at the urging of then DOA Secretary Mike Hipsch. The first media report on this loan appeared on May 17th. The next day, on May 18th, Representative Barca's office contacted WEDC staff to request, as members of the WEDC Board of Directors, that they meet with us later that week. We asked them to bring all documentation regarding the BCI loan, as well as documents regarding any other unsecured loans WEDC had made and any awards made against the recommendations of WEDC underwriters. WEDC staff refused our initial request. Because we take our fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers as board members very seriously, we continue to press WEDC to respond to our request for information. Finally, over a month after our initial request, WEDC partially complied when it released over 900 pages of documents late on Friday afternoon. 2 files were released, one containing hundreds of jumbled documents regarding the BCI loan, and another containing the contracts of 27 awards that WEDC made in 2011 and 2012, for which no formal staff underwriting was done. On the same day, WEDC Secretary and CEO Reed Hall sent us a letter informing us that if we wanted any details regarding these awards, we could come to WEDC offices and look through their files. This was clearly an instance of a document dump intended to give the appearance of an agency being responsive while actually serving to withhold portions of information we had requested. WEDC chose to present a narrow range of material covering only a limited time frame and only grants over $200,000. Second, the files WEDC released contained no information regarding who decided to make the grants without proper staff review and why. Hundreds of pages of the material were completely unrelated to our request and were presented with no organization. And of course, none of it would have been released without over a month of pressure from Representative Barca and I. This is not what we expect from WEDC staff in terms of how to respond to a request for information, especially from board members. This is at a time when it seems increasingly likely that fraud was committed against taxpayers, and WEDC has failed to do anything about it. WEDC's response to our attempt to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility as board members is one more indication that Secretary Hall does not take his responsibility for the situation at WEDC seriously. As the LAB audit indicates, the problems at WEDC did not end when Secretary Hall took office, but continued, even as the board and the legislature were being assured that they had been fixed. Board members continue to find out about problems at the agency when they are revealed in program audits or media accounts, rather than the agency being forthcoming with the information. This has happened time and again. And for me, the last straw was the document dump on Friday, which was a clear attempt by WEDC to frustrate and subvert the ability of board members to receive complete information and factual answers to questions raised. I have known Reed Hall for many years, and I believe that he is an honorable man. However, in the light of the serious challenges facing the organization, including the appearance of fraud involving a major donor to the governor's campaign, it is clear that WEDC needs new leadership. Therefore, we are requesting that he step down as WEDC Secretary and CEO. Along with new senior management at WEDC, we also call upon the governor and legislative leaders to, at long last, demonstrate some urgency and leadership to address the crisis at WEDC. The latest revelations have done profound damage to the agency's reputation at a time when Wisconsin continues to lag behind its neighbors in job creation. This body has been quick to respond to allegations of fraud involving programs that help the poor and working class people, and its silence regarding the possible fraud at WEDC is deafening. Seems highly hypocritical to me then that these same Republican leaders are willing to turn a blind eye when the possible fraud involves a maximum donor to Governor Walker's first campaign for governor. I'd like to turn things over now to Representative Barca.
Well, thank you, Senator Lassa. And we don't come at this lightly at all. We serve on the board. We've been at every single meeting since the first one. We are in closed sessions, open sessions, hours and hours of time that we and other board members put in. But we are kept in the dark about so many things that go on, and as Senator Lassa indicated, only told when there's an investigative report or a legislative audit. We cannot perform our fiduciary responsibility when information is continually being withheld from the board. It seems to me at this juncture, there are so many reasons that Reed Hall needs to step down at WEDC. I do not believe he appreciates the importance when running a public agency of providing accountability and transparency for the taxpayers. By no means do I want to give the sense that this alone would right the ship at WEDC, because there are so many problems that we have found in the audit and with this potential criminal investigation. However, it's clear to me that we are unable to proceed and get to the bottom of the problems and protect the taxpayers if he were to continue as a CEO of WEDC. To put it simply, I do not have confidence in Reed Hall's ability to lead our state's jobs agencies and protect the taxpayers of Wisconsin. And I have no sense that board members will be given all the information needed for us to perform our fiduciary responsibility. So there are so many reasons that he must resign. The Audit Bureau report points out that we're not following the law at WEDC, that WEDC is not even following board policies. This is unacceptable. And in his public remarks, he does not seem to appreciate the critical importance of following the law and following board policy. Instead, he denies that this is going on. Under his leadership, WEDC has failed to recoup taxpayer funds that have gone to a company that's outsourced jobs, clearly in violation of board policy. Despite assurances by the Walker administration, I do not believe these issues are fully fixed. And many of the problems, we're not even sure of the myriad of layers of difficulty that has been uncovered. As we've the last couple days gone through nearly 1,000 pages of information, there are revelations that absolutely were astonishing to me. Absolutely astonishing. So not even to mention the performance problems of WEDC being 38th in the nation in jobs, being dead last in new business startups. But what troubles us most is the stonewalling that's going on. As Senator Lassa said, it's time for the Republican leadership in the legislature to come forward and join us in gathering this information. It's time for the Audit Bureau, the Audit Committee, to do their job and hold a hearing on that very scathing audit that came out. It's time for the Economic Development Committees to hold a hearing to get to the bottom of this. It shouldn't just rely upon the board. The legislature has a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers as well. There's a number of things that we have come across that just are so troublesome. The building committee loan, which we're going to talk about in a second, is just one of 30 WEDC awards that were made without any underwriting whatsoever. This was never told to us as a board. That obviously puts taxpayers at much greater risk than when underwriting is done. So much of this is information that should have been disclosed to the board all along in order for us to protect the taxpayers. But Reed Hall should understand that he's supposed to serve the taxpayers of Wisconsin and not just protect the governor and advance his political ambitions. But that's not what's going on. And I'm going to end just by talking about, one revelation that we had. about this building committee loan that as we went through emails is just so incredibly troubling to me and leads to possible criminal charges. And I'm going to grab this here. I would hope that when you get a call from a Maserati dealership asking that taxpayer funds be put forward in order to pay off a loan for a Maserati, that the leader of the organization would issue a cease and desist order to stop any more dealings with this organization. But that's not what occurred. After we found out, after they found out in an email that we now have, highlighting how troubling it was, you've got a Maserati dealer calling to try and recover funds. In addition, it should have been revealed, if it wasn't, that this BCI company had obligations in Oklahoma that they intended to use taxpayer funds to satisfy, as opposed to being focused on creating jobs here in Wisconsin. We should have stopped all activity. But instead, what we now have learned, that activity continued, if not accelerated. That they went forward trying to gather other funds. They went to counties in the southeastern Wisconsin area, asking them to reissue some of their bonding authority, and clearly we now know that it was because they wanted to help this company fulfill their obligations for a Maserati loan, as well as for other obligations that they have. The legal entanglements that this company had were extraordinary. And the fact that either they didn't know, or worse, that they did fully know and continued, that would be criminal activity. I am very concerned. I feel that with Reed Hall not providing us all the information we've asked for that reason, it's time for him to go, as well as the poor performance, as well as the fact that he doesn't appreciate that in Wisconsin, public leaders follow the law, they follow board policy, no excuses, simply apologies. So with that having been said, we'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. Well, we've spoken to them. As a matter of fact, we had a resolution in the Assembly asking our Republican brethren to join us in demanding this information be turned over. Because obviously you have potential criminal liability. You have potential, pay-to-play activities that are going on. And there's more than enough smoke to worry that there could be a raging fire burning that we are not aware of. And it disturbs me that we're not seeing that kind of activity. As Senator Lassa so rightly pointed out, when you have issues involving programs with potential fraud of people who are of modest means, they're all over trying to correct that. With the GAB audit, they had an audit hearing, I think, within 2 weeks. In this, it's been, a month and a half to 2 months, and the budget's still pending, and still no reaction. I think it's irresponsible on the part of Republican legislators to not be joining us in demanding this information be turned over so we can protect the taxpayers against the fraud that took place. We need accountability and transparency. We're just not getting in this agency.
Then have you followed up with the Attorney General?
We had, as you know, we made the call for a federal investigation. We have actually followed up and sent them additional information since we've learned more about all the incredible potential liability associated with this BCI loan.
And have you heard from them?
No, we haven't, but I understand, from past U.S. attorneys and from the statements made to the press that they oftentimes, and I guess generally, do not tell you. I don't know if it's because they want to prevent people from destroying evidence or for whatever reason, but you oftentimes just do not hear. We respect that. We trust they know how to run their organization, and we'll just provide whatever information we have and hope that they, in fact, are moving forward. Of course, as you know, the district attorney, Ishmael Lozan here in Dane County, has indicated that he's also exploring a possible independent or criminal investigation.
So I think Senator Lassa might have spoken to this. What's the information you requested from WEDC that they have yet to provide in the documents that were provided?
Sure. So what we had asked for were a number of things. One was the information regarding the BCI loan, which they did release hundreds of pages on. But we had also asked for other unsecured loans that were made by WEDC, any awards that were made by WEDC that were against the judgment of the underwriters. And then we had asked for additional information regarding the community development block grants and between WEDC and DOA as well.
But also, I want to add that I do not believe they've turned over all the documents on this PCI loan. I have reason to believe that some documents have been withheld. We'll be putting in a secondary request today to ensure that we do have all the information.
Peter, the prior Jorgensen's request, Speaker Voss had said prior that was a political action. He said you have not approached him and talked to him about these absences, what has not been provided by the WEDC. Subsequent to his statement about a week and a half ago, Peter, have you talked to Robin Voss? Have you considered directly approaching Republican leadership and eliciting their support of this action?
Well, we will continue to talk to them. I don't know how much more you can do when you bring a resolution before the entire assembly asking them to join us to gather this information. I mean, the investigative report that initially came out by the Wisconsin State Journal was explosive, to put it mildly. Since that time, other reporting sources have come up with other additional information that adds more concern. And I'll continue to talk to them, of course, but they know exactly how we feel about this and why we think it is so imperative that they join us in protecting the taxpayers' interest and try to prevent waste and fraud from going on in our leading economic development agency.
Right. And I think it shouldn't be incumbent upon us to go to them and say, aren't you concerned about potential fraud going on in a state agency? They should come to that conclusion themselves. They've been very quick to go after potential fraud within other state programs, especially those that help poor and low-income families. But in this instance, when you have the potential of fraud being perpetrated on taxpayers by BCI, their only comments about it have been no comment, as well as we'll look at reforming WEDC in the fall. So we're calling on them to step up. It took them 3 weeks to deal with issues concerning Wisconsin shares. It's taking them only a couple of weeks when we've encountered potential fraud in other programs. We want to know what's taking them so long. Why aren't they joining us in going after potential fraud and protecting taxpayers?
I mean, is it because it's the top 1%? I mean, you deal with Maserati dealerships and you deal with all of this other type of information. It's just extremely troubling to me. And these revelations that we found in the emails that we reviewed, that we received late on Friday, it's only added to our concern. And, for me, it's very understandable why we're 38th in jobs. When I see the amount of activity going on by that staff to help this one company, despite all of the problems and legal entanglements they had, and the fact that they got their original loan under fraudulent filings. It's just outrageous, quite frankly.
How do you respond to community board members who describe themselves as the private side, that being Lisa and Aaron Scott, who describe what you're talking about as political posturing, and they say that there's been a lot of focus on missteps, but very little recognition of the work that's been done to improve the process of the end.
Well, let me say two things. First of all, we do acknowledge when there's improvement, and in fact, Senator Lassa and I have led most of those efforts to bring in stronger board policies. So it's not the case that we have not acknowledged that. We have. And the board has tried mightily to try and bring in reforms. But we find out in the audit, they're not even following board policy in many cases. But let's not forget, these are people that are appointed by the governor. And work at the governor's pleasure and perhaps work at the governor's direction in some cases.
Do you expect the governor to be at the July 20th meeting at the WEDC?
Well, he's indicated in news reports that he would be there. So if that's what he's told the public and citizens of the state, I would hope that he would be there.
One other point of clarity, Peter, you mentioned BCI, the league associated, but that's being repaid to Oklahoma. Can you be more clear on that point? I guess I'm a little confused.
Well, what I'm saying is that there were news accounts, and of course, if you had looked at the legal filings, you would find the challenges they had in Oklahoma and the fact that he had significant debts there. And so what I had stated was that the staff should have been aware of those obligations and of those legal entanglements, and that should have been a red flag that the money would not even be used in Wisconsin for the most part, but it would be going to try to fulfill legal and debt obligations that were had in Oklahoma. But clearly, there's no question they were aware because this Maserati dealer had called them, and it's in an email that we have that the staff was aware of the money owed. And Maseratis, as you know, are very expensive. The debt was very high. And they obviously at that point, as I indicated, there should have been a cease and desist order at that point saying, wait a second here. Our hard-earned Wisconsin taxpayer money is going to go to pay off a Maserati, for God's sakes? But instead, under Reed's leadership, they continued to pursue getting more funds to be given to this BCI company.
One question here. I believe you mentioned that you had not received information of all the loans or grants under $200,000. Do you have a sense of how many loans or grants of the dollar sum, the total dollar amount of those loans?
No, we don't. And that's why we had asked for those documents as well as to meet with the VP of Finance, Jake Custer, as well as at least one of the underwriters that have been there since the very beginning. And we were told by WEDC that they would not be making their staff available to talk to us, and that they would not be providing us with documentation in their original in response to our original request.
But you know, one thing maybe I'd add to that, we as an organization, we spent quite a bit of money to purchase a software to have this program called Salesforce. And it was suggested to us when this procurement was taking place that board members would have access to that Salesforce. If we did, we would be able to find out a lot of this information going on. It's my understanding the governor's chairman of the board does have access as well as his staff. But when we made the request, Senator Lassa and I asked to have that access, we were denied it. And I think board members, court cases have been clear. Board members should have access to financial information for boards that they serve on. And that would make it very easy to clear up. But obviously, at a minimum, they have a legal obligation to turn over all of the documents surrounding this BCI, as well as the other requests that we put forward.
Thank you so much.